Leading up to No Time to Die, I'm making my way through all the Bond movies and trying to rank each of the films from each of the Bonds. This is the second video in the series, so today we're going to stop and rank all 7 Roger Moore Bond films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, I invited my buddy Griffin, who is a James Bond expert, to join me for this series. I've seen all of the James Bond movies, but he is the one that is passionate about this franchise. This is your favorite franchise of all time, right?
It is. It is my favorite franchise of all time. But sadly, today's episode is dedicated to talking about my least section of said franchise, the Roger Moore era, which for many, many people, this is their favorite era because they grew up on it.
Right.
I didn't with Roger Moore, and so there's always been some sort of like disconnect between me and these series of films. That's not to say there aren't some hidden gems in there, but
And as a starting point, that's my feeling as well. This is my least favorite little era of Bond films where it just always seemed a little bit too much for whatever they were going for. They went for it with these movies, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Real quick, one final thing before we get started. This video is brought to you by Audible. Audible has a gigantic collection of audiobooks. I am a massive fan. In the year 2018, I listened to over 60 books on Audible, and you can get a free audiobook for free from Audible at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. If you sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible, you can get yourself a free audiobook. And the James Bond film series are based off the James Bond books by Ian Fleming. I actually haven't read any of them yet or listened to any of them. That's one of the things I'm planning on doing before we get to the Daniel Craig ones with Casino Royale. I was actually planning on listening to the Audible version of it. Mm-hmm. You've actually read some of the books, and which one would you recommend that I check out? What's your favorite of the books?
Well, I'll give you 3. Okay. Casino Royale is bar none my favorite of the books. It's probably Fleming's best movie. That's
the one I was planning on checking out too. So
yeah, it's really, really good. From Russia with Love is a nice little Cold War, espionage thriller. It's similar to the it's different from the movie, but similar to the movie. It's just a nice book that is representative of that time period. And then 3, a movie we're gonna get to a little bit later on, is Moonraker, which, depending on who you talk to, might be the best novel. Some people really love this one, and I can understand why. It's great.
So if you're interested in checking out a James Bond novel for free, you can get one at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. Sign up for that 30-day free trial, and you can get yourself a free James Bond audiobook. With that said, we're going to get started with our ranking. What I did was I took my ranking, Griffin's ranking, and the Rotten Tomatoes scores ranking, average them together to create this master list that we're going to go through. And then with each of the movies, we'll say where we ranked it. But that's where this list is coming from, the average of mine, Griffin's, and Rotten Tomatoes together. Coming in last place, according to what we just did, is Octopussy.
Yeah.
Griffin, what's your take on Octopussy?
Man, I've never really liked this one. I just think it's boring. I think some of the decisions made in here are just baffling, like putting Roger Moore in clown makeup. Obviously, it's the big one. Like, just what are we doing here? I always forget that this movie exists. It just doesn't have strong of an impact on me. But what I do like about it is that it is more so than some of the other more. It's not necessarily playing it. The villain isn't necessarily a megalomaniac. It's more so remnants of the Cold War and whatnot.
Actual
so
Cold War stuff.
Which it is nice to turn to form for that, but ultimately it's with this just kind of, it is literally based off of a short story that Fleming wrote. It's not even based off a full, story, which we've seen, the Octopussy side of that. But then when we get to the Dalton films and we see The Living Daylights, we'll see the upside of that. So the locations are different, which is kind of exciting, but they don't really do anything interesting. And there's some weird stuff in this movie.
Right.
I just feel very uncomfortable watching it.
I mean, it starts off with a plane sequence and then it does another plane sequence at the end of the movie, which normally isn't a good, like you want to do different things, not the same thing. The end plane sequence, he literally bear hugs a plane while it's doing donuts and then climbs up the shaft and starts punching guys on the outside of the plane. Is like, this isn't working. In the middle of the jungle, he jumped, like, it's not just him in clown makeup. He swings from a vine and then the Tarzan, like, I'm watching with my wife and she goes, what just happened? Did they really just do the Tarzan thing?
It's weird, man. It's so and like the no, I don't even know. And like at this point, I mean, obviously Roger Moore is just too old for it. And he's almost become a parody of like the of like his former self. Like, 'cause at the beginning he a bit more like snark and sass than say Connery did for sure, and it's part of what like made him who he is. But like when you get to a movie like Octopussy, he's just like gone way down the hole, and it's just weird. Like this doesn't feel like the same, you know?
Right. So where did you have this one in your ranking?
I have this at the bottom, and truth be told, it is a tie for the film I have in second to last, but I just ultimately had to give it to Octopussy just because it is so, for as much as I don't like the second one on my list, this one is so unremarkable, and it leaves no impression on me. Like I don't even remember it half the time.
So for me, it's at number 5, and Rotten Tomatoes, it's at number 6. Speaking of number 6 on our master list is The Man with the Golden Gun. Yeah. Actually, as I was watching this one, I was actively rooting for it, like wanting to like it, because it's got Christopher Lee in it as the villain, and even the basic idea of this assassin trying to assassinate Bond, and so the back and forth, and then kind of the most dangerous game aspect of kind of the finale of it. There's so many things about it that I was like, man, I really want to like this. And then just so many unbelievably bad ideas and callbacks. And it's like, hey, let's have the sheriff show up.
Oh God, yeah. The biggest
what?
Yeah, no, it's so weird because you're right. I want to like this movie, like for Christopher Lee as Scaramanga alone. Like he is the only reason this movie gets like any sort of like bump in my book. And like the kill zone, how he like kills his prey, the whole like shenanigans he sets up and whatnot. Like I love that in theory. Even in it is interesting, but like, dude, I hate Nick Nack. That like he is by far the worst henchman ever, and like just what they do with him is just like really weird. This movie in general just makes me uncomfortable. Like while I'm watching it, like I don't, and I can't pinpoint what exactly, but like there's just the overall tone and aesthetic is just so weird, especially when you compare it to Live and Let Die. And I think part of the reason why is because they wanted this movie to come out like as soon as it did. They filmed it like immediately following Live and Let Die, and so like the scripting was rushed, the production was rushed. John Barry didn't even do the score. So like it was just like it's just weird. Like the lead the song by Lulu is just like bafflingly bad. Like,
it's like he'll get it done with a golden gun.
Yeah,
that's a line of the song. It's like, wait, did she really just say that?
Yeah. And like I kind of like what they're doing with like the whole like Hong Kong sort of like kung fu stuff to add into the movie. Like
I'm not sure if Roger Moore actually did martial arts, but it seemed like he was a little bit more physically active in some of the fight scenes in his early movies, to where it seemed like they really were going for something there. And I can appreciate that. But then, they do a car chase and the car flips in the air and he goes, woo!
Oh,
and then
dude.
Hillbilly guy's going, driving around here.
The slide was.
What are we doing? Slide was.
Yeah, it's so bad. Actually, I do want to correct myself. I said John Barry didn't do this Man with the Golden Gun. He did. Just like arguably his worst score that he's ever done because he was pressed for time. He did do the score for Live and Let Die. And so anyways, but I just want to clear that up. But it's just, and so this is it's interesting because this is the second film directed by Guy who did Goldfinger, and this is why I don't think he's actually a good director. Because like Goldfinger, you know, you're given, you know, you've got Connery, you got a pretty good story. With this one, just I think a lot of his flaws really start to show themselves. And like Goodnight, like she's just an absolute waste. She's terrible.
Yeah, it's one of my notes. Like she's incompetent. Like
she is.
Normally they're involved or they're at least like killed off so that he gets revenge, at least something. She's just incompetent and annoying.
Yeah,
not a good thing to do.
No, yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, and like some of the stuff where like Nick Nack or what is that stuff like when he's like in the thing where there's like a whole bunch of statues and like Nick Nack surprise attacks him or something. It's just like, and then there was like the weird boat chases. Yeah,
but it worked in the last one. So let's do it again. Like, no, do new things.
Yeah.
So I had number 6. You had it at number 6. It's at number 6. Which brings us to number 5 on our master list, A View to a Kill. A lot of people, Rotten Tomatoes included, have this one last. You had this one actually a little bit higher up on your list. That's what's kind of pushing it up to the number 5 spot here. The thing that's interesting about this movie for me is just all the side cast. Of course, Christopher Walken as our main villain, but then you have was it Allison Doody, the girl from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, is a young girl in this one. Ivan Drago, Dolph Lundgren is in it. Grace Jones is in it, who's in a bunch of these mid-'80s. He's in Conan the Destroyer. So it's just fun to see all those people show up inside of a movie. Yeah, but then he's trying to blow up a fault line.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. It when you look at it, it is like when you look at his Zoran's master plan. Yeah, it's kind of silly, like what he's trying to do, but like that's to me, Max Zorin is just like that is just like a solid Bond villain. Like going through a Bond, like he's in it for greed. He's a sociopath. This is actually a pretty violent movie when he mows down all those people in the cave. Like that's a pretty dark moment. And like that's the part where you're just like, oh crap, this guy is actually insane. And I love how Christopher Walken just chews the scenery in this. Like he is so good. And I love the attire of the Zorin head. I think Austin Powers does a nice parody of that a little bit. I also like the fact that this movie, like a good chunk of this movie, takes place in San Francisco. Just the change of scenery. We don't really see Bond in America a whole lot, and like I like the climactic action set piece on the Golden Gate Bridge is like awesome. It's so good. The big problem with this film is just Roger Moore is way too old. He should be doing what he's doing in this movie. And
57 years old. The Bond girl at the beginning was only 27. He's 30
bad.
years older, and he doesn't like. I mean, obviously, he didn't age like Tom Cruise. But just the look that he has about him, he looks like someone's dad. Yeah. And he's cracking these puns, which are also known as dad jokes.
Yeah.
So it has this double down effect of making him just have everything about him feels like the creepy old man that just shouldn't be doing the womanizing thing while being this guy. Right. And this one of all of them, just because he's so clearly an old man or becoming an old man, it just doesn't work.
It's not. I think the biggest missed opportunity, and this is something the Bond films have always struggled with, which I'm hoping they're going to correct in Time to Die. Whenever they get to that final song for their actors, they never play into the fact that he's an older person. I actually think that for a lot of A View to a Kill, relationship with I believe her name's Stacy, right? The Bond girl. She for a lot of that, it feels like a father kind of like daughter kind of relationship. Like he's being more of a mentor figure, and when it's painted in that sort of light, like there are a couple of scenarios where he like you know, he puts her to bed when normally he would bed the woman in an earlier film. And so like when it does that, I'm like, I really like this because it's seeing him in a different sort of light, and it's acknowledging the fact that he's gotten older, but then it's all completely undone at the end with just that when he goes and he has sex with her in the shower. It's like if if that part had been taken out of it, I think the movie would be it would sit better with a lot of people. I mean, yeah, it's got like some cheesy stuff here and there that a lot of the Moore films had, but like the Funkscape is awesome.
Oh, that's right. At the beginning of it, it plays California Girls in the middle.
Yeah,
not the best choice.
No, it's not I love that ski sequence. You're right. The music kind of ruins it. I love the fire truck chase though, through San Francisco, and actually like him getting out of
Terminator
that.
3.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously, like, I think this is one of John Barry's best scores, actually, I might add. I'm not the biggest fan of the Duran Duran song, but like, which a lot of people would consider it to be their favorite. But I don't know, man. Like this, the more I sit on this movie and the more I watch it, the more I just really appreciate what they were going for with it. And I feel like had Timothy Dalton done this film, we might have gotten a better movie.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. Where did you have this one in your ranking?
I had this at number 3, just because I just rather like my number 4 is probably better, but I would rather rewatch this one just for like Zoran and Grace Jones and like all this stuff. So,
and I had it at there's like a 3-way tie at the bottom of mine where it was he's just too old. I just couldn't get there.
I mean, that's totally fair. Yeah.
It's exactly what you just kind of said of that. If they'd either had Dalton, who's 20 years younger, or have Bond age and act his age, it changes everything. Because I don't care about crazy, stupid villains. I really like Tomorrow Never Dies, which is this wacky, goofy one, but it's entertaining to me. But and I could get into Zoran, but some of that other stuff is just what kind of kills it for me.
Fair enough.
Like it's just so obviously you got to. I love it when we get to see a character actually age. I love to see them at different phases of life. And with Roger Moore, he's doing the same shtick that he was doing in Live and Let Die, and then what Connery was doing. So it's like 25 years later, and it's the same person, and it does not work with a 57-year-old man. All right. Next movie on our list, coming in number 4, is Moonraker. So I think we probably covered a little bit different directions. I'm actually really positive on Moonraker. You're probably a little bit more on the negative side on Moonraker.
No, I'm really not. It's just kind of where it fell on my list. Honestly, yeah. Like I forget where did I tell you this was just again?
You're at number 5, so only you're one below where it's at. I think I have it one higher than where it's actually on this list.
Listen, this is the Bond franchise most useless. I mean, honestly, but actually, I kind of take that back because View to a Kill and Octopussy are pretty ridiculous. But it's like slapstick. This is just like
it just goes for it. Totally goes.
And for the most part, it works.
I have this one at number 2 on my list. And it's because this to me feels like they embraced the Moore-isms, the goofiness, the camp. And if it took it to its fully logical conclusions and just tried to entertain. And so, I mean, you've got Jaws chasing them the whole movie. Obviously, they go to space, but then you have the cable car sequence. You have like him battling samurais that are in armor. There's the boat jumping sequences. I mean, it just goes for all of it inside of it. It's ridiculous. I mean, there's laser fights. It kind of works. It kind of lands. Even just he goes to the facility there, the Drax facility, and they put him in the zero-G machine and they're spinning him around, and it goes for entertainment value. It embraces the ridiculous. And one of the things I realized while kind of doing this and looking into which directors were doing everything, I guess it's Lewis Gilbert, who did You Only Live Twice. And in that ranking was very positive on that movie. Like I just thought it was really entertaining. I mean, there's big, gigantic bass. There's ninjas showing up. The director, that's his movies. They go for it on the entertainment value and these big action sequences and stuff. And that's kind of what I want. And his specific aesthetic seems to kind of sync up with me quite a bit. Yeah,
no, I agree. Like out of all of them, I would say that this is definitely like more akin to You Only Live Twice. And you're right, it's because it's directed by the same guy. And you're right, it plays into the ridiculousness of Moore and what his tenure kind of became known for. I think, at first glance, people will often look at this oh God, this has to be the worst one because it's Bond going into outer space. But like when you watch the movie, they make it work. Like it's not like that. I mean, it's ridiculous when you get to the final battle and they're like shooting their guns, but like it's fun, you know. and like Hugo Drax, some villain. He's very, I mean, similar to like Zorin, although I would say probably more so. He is just like that stereotypical Bond villain. I actually think he's even better in the novel than he is in the movie. But Michael Lonsdale does a phenomenal of just bringing this like cackling maniacal, like, you know, to the big screen. And some of his motivations are actually they're interesting. And you know, he views him as like this god complex. He always. Yeah. Anyways, you can cut that little bit out. But yeah, no. I mean, for me, what it comes back to is just like if I just want to pop in a Roger Moore movie, and just that goes all in on the ridiculousness of his tenure, and that's just a lot of fun with some great. You know, you mentioned the cable car sequence, the stuff in space. I'm gonna go with Moonraker. I think its predecessor does this sort of thing a little bit. But I also think Moonraker is a great companion piece to The Spy Who Loved Me. Obviously, though, I mean, you know, Dr. Goodhead is not the greatest of for many reasons, and that infamous, you know, floating sex scene is always funny, but
just. They go for it. What's he doing? Going for reinsertion. Whoa! He went for it.
It's a ridiculous movie. I mean, you know, it's peak, in my opinion.
Yes, it's peak Roger Moore, and I mean, just even that built it. Like if you at the end credits of the last one, they say he will return in For Your Eyes Only. Next movie. Moonraker.
Yeah.
Why? Because Star Wars came out. And it's like documented. It's like, all right, what do we have that we can put Bond in space? We'll give you whatever budget you need, but we got to get Bond in space.
Yeah.
It's entertaining. It is ridiculous. It is all sorts of problems here, but it definitely put a smile on my face. All right, moving through our list. Kicking off our top 3 is Live and Let Die. Now, you're a lot more positive on this one than I was. I actually have it, I think, at number 5 on my list.
Wow.
I had some frustrations with this one. So how about you praise it for a little bit, and then I'll give my quick thoughts.
Yeah, no, dude, for me, this is through and through only Moore movie I just consistently. Well, there's another one that we'll get to a little bit later on, but this one is just, this is a lot. I think Roger Moore comes out of the gate really strong here. It does have some of the feeling of the Connery films a little left over, which is why I think I like it a little. But dude, this thing is a time capsule of the 70s if I've ever seen it. Like his pants, the you know, the music. And I think the other thing I really like about it is, you know, it plays into the whole like blaxploitation films, which is something very different that we have not seen before. I love Kananga, an awesome villain. Baron Samedi is a lot of fun. I love the whole voodoo stuff. It's freaky, but it's different. It's interesting. I love oh God, what's her name? The Bond girl. Well, Solitaire, but who's the Jane Seymour? Jane Seymour,
Dr. Quinn, medicine woman.
Yeah, exactly. She's great. And you know, when you look at her career, she started out as a Bond girl. It's just really interesting. My first go-to is her as the Crashers. So, yeah. But no,
a lot of different career choices in there. Just for me, it's Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, because that was such a big show in the 90s. Yeah. And then so Dr. Quinn, medicine woman shows up in Wedding Crashers. Oh, I wonder what she's doing. Whoa!
Yeah, right.
A little different.
This is very different. No, yeah, I just think I think the music's great. I think Barney did one of the best songs to date for sure. Different aesthetic, introduced a new era of Bond. I think this is probably say it's Roger Moore's best performance. Just he's got like the charm, he's got a little bit of the snarkiness and the sassiness, but he hasn't quite gone down into the ridiculousness territory.
Not in full dad joke mode.
Yeah, exactly. There might be one that I think equals it, which we'll get to a little bit later. But this one for me just really ticks all the boxes. I love his some of his attire and just the climax. Obviously, when Kananga like blows up, like that's so cool with the crocodiles and everything. Like it's such a different kind of film. And oh man, I keep thinking of all this stuff. The boat is so cool. Mm-hmm. Like
boat chase is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. This movie, it's rock solid.
Yeah, I don't. There's just a lot of things that just didn't sit well with me. Some of it's the time. Well, some of the time capsule stuff made it kind of interesting, like when he gets the ride to Harlem from a black guy.
Oh God, that's that.
You
yeah.
Give me a ride for $20. I'll take you to a KKK Ku Klux Klan. Whoa! We just said that in the movie. Whoa! We just went for that.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, just the stuff with Jane Seymour where he tricks her into taking her virginity with cards. It's like,
that's not good. It's not.
This is real uncomfortable, real fast, and whenever the moves they go into that category, just that you just make him. Yeah, it's stuff that has aged incredibly poorly.
No, yeah,
so it's tough to watch some of that stuff when you're like, oh dear, what were we thinking as a society back in the day? Yeah. But the boat chase is pretty cool. But then in the middle of the boat chase, you have the hillbilly sheriff guy that just feels so out of place, and that they thought, and this guy's really good. Let's bring this guy back in Europe.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff distracts me, and then maybe it's just because the girl and her virginity is so interwoven into the voodoo plot line, where it's like, this just every time we're touching on some of these plot points, it just doesn't sit right with me because of the womanizing stuff that I think that for me just kind of killed it. I was also watching it with my wife where she's like, I hate this movie. Like I openly saying, I hate this and I hate this Bond and I don't want to watch another one of them until we get to Daniel Craig.
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough. Like this movie really is a time capsule. Maybe part of the reason why I am more fond of it is this was the more film that like I would watch more often. And I think I think some of the outdatedness is part of what amuses me, like just because of like how ridiculously, just this is the early 70s, folks. Like it was just kind of like laugh at it because it's just so blatantly wrong and in your face. Yep. Like, oh wait, you got a honky on your tail. Like I'm like, what? What is happening right now? This is just so weird. But I don't know. It's different enough, and I like in the voodoo aspects and the fact that it's in like New Orleans and in America and stuff like that's. It's fun for me.
From there, our runner-up is For Your Eyes Only. So there's where they had a couple of these ones that I hadn't watched in a while, and this was one of the ones that. I mean, I didn't have any real memories of it. And I was like, I'm really digging a whole lot of this movie. So much more so than I was thinking. And it's like, especially as it kind of moved into the third act and they have like the rope climbing sequence and he's teaming up with these other guys. I was like, I'm just tracking along with this. Like this, they actually staged some really cool things inside of this movie that, like I don't believe I'd ever seen A View for a Kill before watching it last night. But all these other ones I definitely watched at some point in time. And so this one was one that kind of had just slipped my memory and just even kind of built into it the plot line about him trying to, starting off from going to his wife's grave. And then he's kind of mentoring this girl on don't get revenge. It doesn't work. It doesn't pay off. Has hints of a more mature Bond. They, of course, have to spoil a bunch of that, but they have the hints of a growing man with a character arc. He's not forever the juvenile that he was when he started. They've got those elements inside of it that just kind of, I don't know, I really enjoyed a lot of that stuff that they actually did with the Bond character, as well as just some of the way they did the set pieces that worked nicely, especially coming off of Bond in space and then grounding it a little bit better it was a much better 1-2 punch than I was expecting. I guess a 1-2-3 punch with the movie that came before Moonraker too. So
yeah, this is the one. And I rewatched this like a couple of months ago, and it really like just catapulted up in my list because I used, similar to you, one that I didn't really go back to. Well, I didn't really go back to the Moore films in general, but this would be one that would kind of just like pass me by for whatever reason. But I really do think on the right day, this could possibly be the best out of the Moore films, and it's one of the best James films to date for the reasons that you mentioned. It actually feels like because they went so ridiculous and over the top with Moonraker that they were like, okay, let's reel this in a little bit and focus on a more personal and character-driven story. I love this as a companion piece to Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think it really is effective. And while, yeah, there's some like silly moments here or there, like him, you know, dropping Blofeld down like a chimney stack or whatever. I mean, like in principle, I like what they're doing there with the ideas, but like it's just silly in execution. Much, you know, similar to like a lot of the Moore films, but like this movie does feel like the filmmakers and Roger Moore are taking it a little more seriously. It feels more like a revenge kind of movie in the same vein as, say, like a Quantum of Solace, which I do think you don't get Quantum of Solace without For Your Eyes Only. Without License to Kill. Quantum of Solace to me is like the next progression in that line. The fact that Grease is so prominently featured, it's the only movie other than No Time to Die to have featured Grease and to really see that part of the world in a different way. I love the rock climbing finale. I mean, that stuff is so cool. You're right. The relationship he has with the girl, and how they're kind of learn to, they learn from one another. I guess it really bolsters his character as a person. And you know, she's able to impart like wisdom onto him in a natural sort of, with him dealing with you know, revenge and grief and all that sort of thing. Yeah, and then on top of that, the action is great. The action is so good in this movie, surprisingly so, and I think it still holds up pretty well. To me, this is just like a solid, like revenge sort of Cold War thriller that is far and away the most mature outing out of Moore's tenure. It's all the darkest, I would say, out of his tenure. We have that
the scene where the car chase, where the car's like tipped over the side, walks up to the guy, tosses something in, and then in Moore's best moment in all his movies, he just kicks the car off the cliff.
Yeah, it's great. Like I think what this showed me is that, you know, when Moore needs to be like the ruthless killer, like he can do it. It's just they never took advantage of that, you know? Right. So yeah, I mean, like you mentioned a lot of why it's a really solid film. I just go back and forth between, you know, my nostalgia and loving for the classic nature of Live and Let Die, but then like just appreciating, you know, For Your Eyes Only as just like the better film. Those are my 1 and 2, really.
So I have this one at number 3 on my list. One more thing to mention on this one: Bill Conti of Rocky,
great score,
did the score for it.
Yeah,
so definitely feels its time period. Definitely a product of the very early 80s. That's when they sounded like that. Yeah. But, you know, a great composer working on the Bond movies. But that brings us to number 1 on our list, and that is The Spy Who Loved Me. And this is one that, coming off of Live and Let Die, that I wasn't crazy about, as much, like wasn't as positive as you. And then The Man with the Golden Gun, I was like, man, what have I gotten myself into? And then this one just very quickly turned it around. I was like, it just immediately felt more cinematic to me.
Yeah,
like you can feel the budget going up. You can feel the special effects, everything kind of moving into more the modern era, or progressing from what they were limited to in the 60s to that next phase in the 70s. And so the just action I just felt was more exciting. They're doing bigger things. And just right out of the gate, I was like, okay, I was so nervous about the next 5 days of my life trying to binge watch through all these Moore films. And then this one just really immediately kind of won me over with the big improvements. And once again, it's is it Lewis? Is his name?
Gilbert. Yeah.
Lewis Gilbert.
Yeah.
Once again, big. They get on the ship, and it's just these huge sets, tons of extras, a couple mannequins in the background, but just large scale type stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
Or I love that stuff.
This is, I mean, no matter who, like some people will say, oh, their favorites Live and Let Die. Oh, their favorites, Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only. It doesn't matter like what your favorite is. This is just the quintessential Roger Moore film. This is like, this is what he's known for. This is the movie that everyone goes back and they're like, this is why we love Roger Moore. And it is a good movie. And I think it's, other than For Your Eyes Only, it is the only film out of the Moore era to really dig into the Cold War. And this one more so than previous ones. He's teaming up with a Soviet agent in this one. So, which is just, and I love that dichotomy there and the dynamic between the two of them. You get to go to a lot of interesting locales. This is where we get introduced to Jaws. I love Stromberg as the villain, because what's interesting about him is like, he's not like this wicked or maniacal maniac. Actually, he's like the only Bond villain to where his plan like deals with like bettering society. Like he is just like so blinded by his own just like, I guess, self-righteousness. Great
villains believe they're the hero of the story.
Exactly. And you can't really say that any other Bond villain, save for possibly Safin in No Time to Die. From what we've gotten from him, it sounds like he's going to kind of be in the same vein as that, which I love when villains like are just so like hell bent and they view themselves as like we have the answer to society's issues. Like when they feel they are the good guy, I think you get some really interesting stuff, and that's obviously shown here in The Spy Who Loved Me. But I mean, it's fun. It's just a great
classic cold open too.
Oh yeah, dude, the cold open is great. And this one and the car, the Lotus. Like, come on, that's like when people think of when people think of James Bond and like all the gaps and like the world of espionage and like the colorful villains and the henchmen, they think of this movie.
So I had this one at number 1 on my list. Rotten Tomatoes had this one at number 4. Where did you have this one on your list?
I believe this was number 4 on my list.
You're a hater.
I am not a hater. Listen, it's like this to me is like the comfort food of the franchise. It's like, I know what I'm getting. It's good, but I think for all the misses some of my top 3 might have, I love the swings they take, and I think they knock it out of the park.
But according to our master list, this one comes in at number 1. Griffin, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can follow me over on Twitter at Griff Schiller, or you can check out my channel FilmSpeak, where I do movie reviews, celebrity interviews, and a bunch of podcasts over there, our award season show, The Frontrunners. So if you're interested in any of that, you can go follow me over there.
So if you don't know, we already went through all of the Sean Connery Bond films. We'll be coming back in our next video, which will be Lazenby as well as Dalton, since doing a Lazenby ranking would be not the best filmography to rank, so I was going to clump some of those together, and I'll probably work in some of the weirder stuff too. The other Casino Royale, I think we'll be talking about that one in there as well. So be sure to come back in a few weeks for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Griffin, thank you so much for joining me, and keep talking movies too much.